Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. It's 2 o'clock, so I think we'll make a start, and we'll admit people if they're a little bit later to joining the meeting in the background. But welcome, and thank you for joining us online this afternoon. My name's Neil Tipton. I'm Head of Media and Communications for the Police and Crime Commissioner. And obviously, this is our launch of our Commissioner's Grant Scheme and our briefing event for the funding round of 2024-25. Before we get going proper, I'd just like to do a bit of some general housekeeping. Obviously, whilst we have a bit of a format, we've got general presentations and we will have a question and answer session at the end. But if I can ask everybody to keep their microphones muted whilst the presenters are speaking, that will be really helpful. As we go through the presentations, if you have any questions, I'd encourage you to use the chat facility in the meeting, and we'll try and answer questions both as we go through, and certainly we'll do a roundup of all those questions at the end, and then any others we'll do by the usual show of hands on the Teams button at the end. And I should also just say that we are recording this meeting. It's our intention that we will share the meeting online so that anybody who wasn't able to join us today is able to see the playback and can see the full presentations to help them with the application process. So now, if there's anybody who'd rather not potentially be shown as a background camera, if you want to turn your cameras off, that should help. But as I say, in the main, the presentation is going to be focusing on the slides, and we'll come to question and answers at the end. So I'll just move us forward to have a look at the agenda that we've got today. So as you can see there, we've got an introduction from the Commissioner, who will be on next. Then Richard Long from our office will be giving some more information about the the funding theme for this round of grants. We welcome Nick Coleman from Warwickshire County Council's Community Safety Team, who is going to talk about the importance of involving partners in the community safety field when you're developing your bids, and a little bit of background detail about the partners themselves. Then Sarah Ansell, our Treasurer, will be talking you through the grants process and all the eligibility criteria and how you can apply. Then you've got me for a little bit, just for a quick overview on some of the factors around engagement and publicity to think about, before we get to the question and answer session, which my colleague Priya Tekhalsi will be comparing for us, before Emma Daniel, the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, is going to give a bit of a closing overview. So I think without further ado, I shall hand you over to the Commissioner. Philip. You're on mute, Philip.
First mistake. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for joining our grants launch today. It's an important event for my office, and I hope it's an important event for you and the organisations that you represent. So I'm just going to provide a sort of high-level overview of some of the things that I do. So I am the Police and Crime Commissioner, so the and crime bit is really working beyond just the police into the criminal justice system, and indeed prevention of crime and all the good works that a lot of you do. And it's good to see some faces, some familiar faces on the call today. So we work with partners, and I'm delighted that we've got Nick Coleman from the County Council to discuss and solve community safety issues. And at the moment, we're working very closely with them about measures to tackle antisocial behaviour in all parts of Warwickshire. We do, in addition to the grant scheme, we do commission some services to prevent crime and to support victims. And those were all started in, I think it was in April, wasn't it? And we've got 5 commissioned services. I won't go into all the detail, but they complement the work that you do, and they also are very much part of our police and crime plan. So just there on the screen, you can see some of the duties that I have. The police and crime plan is the first thing to do. The 2 important things other than that are to hold the Chief Constable to account, representing community views, and indeed to set the police budget. So we're beginning to work on that now, and that will then be agreed in January, ready for the 1st of April next year. So the plan is really setting the strategic vision. It's a strategic document, not an operational document, for how policing can work with partners to address the issues of concern raised by our residents. It underpins all of the work that we do in our office, and indeed sets the strategic ambitions and aims for Warwickshire Police and other partners. So you can see what the main strapline is to make communities across Warwickshire feel safe and supported, and also to look at outcomes achieved, reoffending reduced, leading to increased confidence in the criminal justice system. So it's a very high level ambition to reduce crime, support victims, and make communities safer. So how does the grants process, which we're launching today, fit into all of this? So I believe that the police cannot solve all of these issues alone, and the communities, charities, and other organisations do have an important role to play. And by us giving funding to those working in local communities, we can help bring forward not only some sensible solutions, but also innovative solutions to tackle the challenges that we have. So last year, we put about £300,000 of projects through grants. We'll come on later to tell you, what the parameters are and the limits, etc. But this is a substantial sum, and I believe that it's important that we continue, hopefully, dependent on the budget setting process, to give the same sort of amount this year. So the police and crime plan priorities, you can see them there. Many of them will know you all already. I won't read them out, but those are the things that the residents and our partners told me was where we need to focus to make Warwickshire safer. And I hope that all of you putting in grant applications will be ticking one or more of those boxes to do just that. Richard Long is going to give us a bit more detail on the relevant focus areas for grants later on. And I want to stress that all successful applications will need to demonstrate how they support the ambitions of the plan. And the themes of prevention and or diversion are very much part of that. So I think hopefully that gives you a sort of broader setting. I'm now going to hand you over to Richard Long from my office, who's going to explain the themes and give a bit more detail on the focus areas of the police and crime plan. So over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, hi everybody. My name is Richard Long. I'm the Commissioner's Head of Policy and Partnerships. And as has been said, I'm just going to talk you through in a little bit more detail around the funding theme and the importance of linking that through to the focus areas of the police and crime plan. I think it's important to sort of say from the outset that you will obviously be provided with a document set that would go with any information for applying for the grants, and much of what I'm going to say will be reiterated in that. So don't worry too much about making sort of copious notes. But broadly, then, much as the Commissioner did for 2023-2024. The funding theme for prevention and diversion is at the heart of the grant scheme for next financial year, and it's an overarching set of requirements for applications into the grants process, and this really seeks to get as far upstream as possible in relation to crime and disorder and community safety and crime prevention, to stop things from happening before they do, or indeed when they have started to take place, to try and curb them as quickly as possible in terms of educating people away from that kind of behaviour. So you'll see that there are the two definitions for prevention and diversion that we're applying as the overarching theme again for this year. So in more detail, prevention, targeting the causes of criminality and or antisocial behaviour in our communities and on our roads, seeking to break the generational cycle of offending to prevent it from occurring in the first place. So as I said, that's really the intention of getting really upstream and making sure that things don't happen in the first place. And secondly, diversion. So supporting individuals who have already begun a journey of perpetrating crime or antisocial behaviour in our communities or on our roads, but who, armed with the right knowledge, understanding and commitment, can be diverted from that path towards a brighter future. So that's, you know, that early intervention space when things have started to go wrong. Because it's important to link these back to the plan, as the Commissioner has said. He's outlined the 5 priorities, but for each of those priorities there are 3 areas of focus. Now, not all of those areas of focus apply to this grant scheme. That's because some of them, for example, relate very specifically to the policing, and as the Commissioner has set out, this is very much about the and crime part of his responsibilities. So you'll see there the areas of focus that are relevant to the scheme. So as well as making sure that your bids fall within that prevention or diversion overarching theme, they have to be linked back to one of the areas of focus within the police and crime plan. More detail on that in the grants paperwork that you'll be issued with, but that's the focus for this year. Thank you.
Apologies, that's I think that's over to me.
It is, yes, Nick. Sorry, I was about to say that, but I realised that I was on mute as well. So
yeah.
Over to you, Nick.
Thank you. So I'm a community safety team manager for the Warwickshire County Council Community Safety Team. So a little bit about what we do and a little bit about the context that sits in terms of when you're thinking about your bids and how you inform the direction your bids are taking. So we coordinate the work of the Safer Warwickshire Partnership Board and subgroups from that. We have a role with the OPCC to organise the big conversation events that happen twice a year, and to embed the Safer Warwickshire Partnership Board strategic ambitions within the work of the various agencies and partners involved. Key partnership work areas, so that includes serious violence prevention, includes hate crime, modern slavery and human trafficking, antisocial behaviour, domestic homicide reviews, prevent, cybercrime and business crime, and a number of those areas are either some of those are currently reviewed internally as well, and some of those are also subject to updated government legislation that we're responding to that places duties on specified authorities. Next slide, please. So with partners, what we aim to do is to respond to community concerns, issues around such as burglary, vehicle crime, and to coordinate funded projects. So Home Office funded Safer Streets, tackling violence against women and girls, county lines, antisocial behaviour and related issues. These contact details I'm sure will come out to you in packs later, but really important that we'd encourage you to make use of those details to get in touch with us, because we very much would welcome consultation, collaboration, working with us in terms of informing your bids. Next slide, please. So broadly, the strategic ambitions for the board around, and you'll see how these align around addressing the causes of violence, establishing safe, healthy, empowered communities, and tackling discrimination in all its forms. And the final slide, I hope, will give a bit more detail and explain a little about the nuance. So what you'll see here is that the county, so we're county council, but we work particularly closely with district and borough councils across the county. So that's North West, that's Nuneaton and Bedworth, that's Rugby South West. And you'll see from here, and I'm not going to talk to each of these elements, but the community safety partnerships priorities vary in nuanced ways across different localities. And so, yes, there's cross-cutting themes and there are commonalities, but there are also distinctions that reflect the different needs and different requirements of different localities. And so in particular, I think what I would encourage you to consider and to seek to consult with and to engage with us on is what that nuance can look like in terms of how you prepare your bids and how you respond to the need in the area. I think without getting lost in the detail of each of these elements, I think that's my overall message is about that nuance, that detail, and being able to reflect local need.
Okay, thanks very much, Nick. Useful again. You know, it is one of the key things that we're looking for when people are putting their applications in, and you'll see there's when you get to it that there are sections in the form that the application form that invite you to talk about how you've looked at working with other partners and what other conversations have been having as you put your bids together, because that's really important to make sure that everything is aligned across the county and with all different partners, because there's a lot of activity that goes on, and what we want to try and do is encourage new work and not perhaps foster sort of duplication of existing efforts. So that's really important to try to get an understanding of where your project might sit in the wider scheme of things. And I would say we will be sharing the slide deck afterwards, and I will put that linked online to the page where all of the information about the grants application process is as well later on. So moving on, our next speaker is Sarah Ansell, who will talk a little bit more about the grants process itself, the eligibility criteria, and how you can apply. Sarah.
Thanks, Neil. And hello, everybody. It's good to see you. So I thought I'd start off by just giving you a few headlines in terms of the grants process for 24/5. Clearly, it's launched today and it will be open for about a month, closing at midnight on the 10th of November. So hopefully that will give you plenty of time to formulate your ideas and get your application forms completed. Any applications outside of that time frame we won't be able to accept, and we can only accept applications through the online form. So that should be available from now on the website, but please have a little look at that and make sure that that looks all in order for you and something that you can begin to start completing. As Richard said, I'm not going to dwell on the prevention and diversion theme. Richard's already talked about that, but within the application form, there are questions, and your application must address at least one of the focus areas in the police and crime plan, and that's really important. And we'll be asking you to stipulate that within the form. So this year, there will be a maximum of 2 separate applications that can be submitted by an organisation. Each of those would be evaluated separately if you did choose to submit 2 applications, and the maximum individual grant application is for £15,000. So there is no minimum, but only £15,000 per application is all that we can do. And that funding will cover the period from the 1st of April 24 to the end of March 25, which is our financial year. So all of your project needs to be delivered within that time frame. There won't be any opportunities to carry forward money into the next financial year. So I think it makes it sort of even doubly important, if you like, for you to be able to get any referral pathways, any staffing and course materials, etc., all established quite early on in the process. And that's why we have launched things a bit earlier this year, in the hopes that we will be able to let you have the decisions in January for those of you that may be successful, so that you can do some of that early planning work to get ahead of the game, so to speak. So if we can move on to the next slide. Probably not too much more to add against this. So we've talked about the online application and that those are the only applications that we will accept. And really, just as you work your way through that form, I suppose my hints and tips to you would be to try clearly observe the word count for each of the questions, but to try and answer them as fully as possible. And hopefully that will give you the best chance of success. I think Richard alluded earlier as well to some guidance notes. And those will be available on the website again from this afternoon onwards. And I would urge you all to have a little look at those guidance notes, have a read of them, and hopefully that will make a bit more sense to you and help you to sort of formulate your ideas moving forwards. So if we move on, the application process, there's one or two certain criteria, if you like, that you will need to check in terms of your eligibility to make an application. They're listed here on the slide and also on the guidance notes. But if you've got any concerns around any of those, please check in with us. Some we may be able to be slightly more flexible with, for example, if you're struggling to have 3 years of accounts, but others there is no flexibility with them, and if you can't comply with that, that would certainly render your application ineligible. But if you're in any doubt, please come back to us and contact us, and we will try to help. If we can move on. Thank you. So in terms of the process and our sort of timeline, once you've filled in your application form, obviously submitted it by the 10th of November, that will go through a series of evaluation stages at the OPCC. But we're hoping, as I say, a bit earlier this year than we have done in previous years, that we can notify everybody by the end of January 2024. So clearly that will give you plenty of time then to start planning and for us to complete the due diligence stages between that end of January deadline and the end of March, so that we can then get the money out to you, hopefully as soon as possible, come early April. So if you are successful in your application, that correspondence that we send out by the end of January will state the level of funding that we are going to, that you've been awarded. And also that will set out some of the next steps, and there will be, as I say, a number of due diligence checks and bits and pieces in terms of exchange of information. But that will all become clear at that point, and we will help you sort of walk the way through that. Generally, there is an oversubscription of the budget that we have for Commissioners' grants, as you might imagine. There is no appeals process, and the Commissioner's decision is final regarding funding. But certainly, you know, we take a lot of time and effort to evaluate all of the applications really fairly, and clearly we hope that they will be of a really high standard, and make us have those difficult decisions. The guidance notes also outline some examples of what the Commissioner is not does not consider to be eligible as part of the grant, and again, I'd definitely urge you to try and consult those guidance notes prior to submitting your application, just to make sure that everything that you are claiming and wanting to deliver as part of your project is eligible under the criteria. I think the next two slides set out some of those. items that the PCC won't fund. That is not a completely exhaustive list, if you like, but it gives examples of the sorts of things that we wouldn't accept. So, as I say, I'm not going to go through all of those on this slide and on the next slide, but I would urge you in the criteria guidance notes to have a look at those and make sure. And if you're in any doubt around any of them, then please come back to us and we will try to guide you in terms of what we may or may not consider to be eligible spend. So certainly, sort of don't be afraid to get in touch with us. So if we move on to the next slide, if that's okay, please. Thank you. So successful applications and the next steps, touched on this slightly before, but we will be doing our due diligence checks and we will require you as part of the process to submit various different pieces of information along with your accounts. So in terms of insurance policies, in terms of some of your other policies and procedures, in terms of equality and diversity, etc. So please ensure that you submit all of those, and that will make the whole process run more smoothly. If we have to keep coming back to you or anything like that to clarify any points or to seek additional information, clearly that builds in more sort of time into the process. So if you can make sure that everything is submitted at the outset, that would be really good. Any new grant recipients are required, of course, to provide their bank details on headed paper. That's so we can set you up on the finance system. Obviously, anybody who's had funding from us before, hopefully you're already set up. But if we need any other additional information to that effect or any of your details have changed, please let us know. Successful recipients will also have to make what is known as a minimum financial assistance or an MFA declaration. And we will, of course, share all the details around that closer to the time to those of you that have been, that the Commissioner wishes to make an award to. So that is something that you need to be aware of. There is a government website that you can have a look at. And certainly if anyone's interested, I can share that later, but it will only be for successful applicants. I think in the past, there have been some legal changes. In the past, it was a subsidy declaration return. That's now gone and it just has moved to this minimum financial assistance declaration. But we can sort of talk you through that process at the appropriate time. So on receipt of the MFA, you will have to complete all of the funding terms and conditions. Sorry, we will share with you also all the funding terms and conditions with that. But all of that needs to be agreed and signed and returned to the OPCC, and that all has to happen before any payments are made to you. So that's why, again, sort of doing things that little bit earlier, it gives us that that space within February to get all of that due diligence undertook, and hopefully if you've returned everything that you need to, that we can get the payments out to you in early April. If we could move on to the next slide. That's lovely. So again, probably not going to really run through this one too much. It's just some key dates there that you might want to jot down in your own, we've talked about all of those, but just to have to hand, and that's the timeline that we're working to this year. And if we can move on again. So it's probably a little bit premature in some respects talking about it here, but I do just want to share very briefly with you that for those of you that are successful in being awarded a grant from the Commissioner, that there will be certain reporting requirements during the course of the year, just so that we can understand that we've got assurance regarding the project being delivered, that the benefits and the outcomes that you've all identified in your application are being achieved, and also for helping us to assess whether we are whether the project is delivering value for money. So as I say, it's a little bit premature at this stage, and we will pick up on some of that, and we will be sharing more details with those applicants, sort of early in the first quarter. We are looking to have quarterly monitoring during the course of the year, but we will share that with you. So a little bit more information just on this one around those reporting requirements. There will be a template that we will want you to submit and complete each quarter, sharing that with us by the 15th of the month following the quarter end, sending it across, just emailing it across to us at each quarterly interval. Clearly, if by the 31st of March there are any underspends from any of your grant monies that you were awarded, so if you've managed to do things more efficiently or things haven't proved to be costing the same as what you anticipated, then any underspends, and as per the terms and conditions, will be need to be recovered by the OPCC, but that's a process that we will go through at the year end off the back of those monitoring returns that you send to us at the end of the year. So probably not too much more to add, but that gives you a flavour of some of the reporting requirements that we will want successful applicants to comply with. And I think as long as you're aware at this stage of those requirements, and we will share more details in fullness of time. So, but if you've got any questions, as I say at the end, we can pick those up. But I would urge you all to have a look at the guidance notes. And if you've got any questions arising from that, then, sort of do get in touch. And that's probably all I wanted to say. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah. Right, well, let's move on. One of the things I wanted to sort of briefly touch upon is around some of the things you might want to consider as you're putting your bid together around engagement and publicity. Excuse me. How will you involve the Commissioner in the project if you're successful? For example, are there any key dates or events where it would be appropriate or sensible for the Commissioner to come and visit? What are the sorts of things that you might do to publicise if you're successful? How you would, the fact that you've got the grant money. Are there perhaps social media campaigns that you run that would be useful to tag the OPCC in or tell us about in advance so that we can help support, share and amplify that through our own social media channels? Because some of the things that we can do, for example, include, as I say, sharing and amplifying your content through our own channels. We can also feature you on our website, particularly when we come out to do some of the visits. We've done various different things, which I'll go on to the next slide to give you some examples of, but that could include things like putting together social media posts, videos, as well as doing some supportive media releases to help publicise the fact that we've helped fund particular initiatives and activities, and that tends to get good reception from our local media. And also we can feature you in some of our other key documents, for example, in our annual reports that we produce each year, and other documentation as we go throughout the year, and help share that news of the work that you're doing. So just to give you a sort of few concrete examples, a few pictures on the screen, just some of these things that we visited in the last year. I'll sort of do it in a clockwise fashion so you get an idea. One of our road safety grants last year was a scheme for young people to learn how to ride safely on mopeds, understand all about road safety, from young people from the Chess Centre in Nuneaton. We obviously went out, visited them while they were doing their training, got some nice images, got some video footage of them, and put that out to the local media and featured that on our website. Moving around, Aspiring Arts, another group that we helped to fund. The Commissioner went along to help present some of the awards at one of their performance evenings. Again, that was another good way to sort of involve us in the project. We've also helped to do public engagement sessions. So with Equip, we helped go out. The Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner went out and supported them doing one of their public engagement sessions in Nuneaton. It's good for both them and also for us to be able to talk to people, particularly if they're service users or members of the public who might have particular interest that aligns with your project. It's always good for us to get out and about and have those conversations. Rugby Street Pastors there in the middle at the bottom. Philip attended the commissioning event for the new Street Pastors. A very nice evening and a good opportunity to meet with directly with some of the people who are involved in that project. And then finally, just another example of how one of the projects we're able to sort of brief the senior officers at Warwickshire Police. This was Warwickshire Search and Rescue. We funded both the van in the background and kitting it out as the incident control unit, which we did over successive years. And we were able to arrange for that to be presented to the senior officers at Warwickshire Police so they could get a good understanding of the new capabilities that gave search and rescue. So I hope those give you a few ideas of the excuse me, of the sorts of things that you could think about, how you might promote your activities, and that's the sort of thing that we might be looking to see when you're putting your applications in, these sorts of things that you might want to consider putting in on the form itself. I think as various people have alluded during the presentation, you'll see I've put the links in the chat to the page which has got the application form on and the guidance notes. That includes a full list of the questions that appear in the application form, so you can go away and have a look at that before you actually go online to pull all the information together. So when you go online, you can save as you go, but also you've got that ability to think ahead and pull together all the materials you might need to make that sort of a bit of an easier process. So I think that sort of concludes our major part of our presentation. But I'm going to suggest that we go to the question and answers now. So it's over to you. I know we've had a number in the chat. So Priya, I don't know if you want to just go through some of the questions we've had, and we'll take it from there. If we can have a show of hands as well, that'd be really helpful for any other questions you might have.
So just looking through the chat, there was a question about the applications and the saving capacity to be able to go on to different stages, which you've already answered in the chat. So you can save your application as you're going through and come back to it later. We've also got some messages there about collaboration and working together. So I have asked when you register for the event, if you're happy to share your email address on a delegate list to people attending. So I'm happy to send that out to everybody if they have indicated that they're happy to share their email, and then people can then contact each other if they want to do some partner work or joint applications. Can't see any hands at the moment, so I'm not sure if anybody's got any more questions. Oh, Deborah, go ahead.
Hello, yes, I'm Deborah. My question is around partnership. So is it possible to partner? So if you are a relatively new organization and you don't have 3 years accounts, is it possible to partner with another organization that's probably been around for a bit longer? Is that possible, or do you still need 3 years account?
Shall I come in on this one, Priya? Yeah. Okay, so hi. I think if you haven't got 3 years of accounts, I would say we can be flexible around that. So have you been a sort of entity for over 12 months, 18 months, something like that? Is that the issue?
Yeah, just 12 months. But I work with a different organization, and basically they work with a lot of young people, and then they send them to us for work experience.
Right.
So yeah,
we would want to do some financial checks on your organisation. So if you've got 1 year's set of accounts, then I think we can accept that, and we can, you know, sort of work from that. But come back to me and contact me if you've got any concerns. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions, anyone? Oh, Will, go ahead. Will, do you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute then for the moment.
No worries.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. I represent Stamp Out Spiking. We work on the streets preventing drink spiking in various areas throughout the country. We were recently a community company and have recently changed to a charity. Obviously, we have accounts for our previous time, but obviously over the last 3 or 4 months, we've got limited accounts for the charity. Would that influence? Is there any way around that?
Yeah, I think probably best for us to have an offline conversation. I think, as I say, we will need to do some financial checks on your organisation. Obviously, it's public money, and we want to make sure that we're spending it well and it's in safe hands, etc. But I certainly don't think that we would want that to be, you know, a sort of defining issue, if you like. But let's have an offline conversation. Let's see what you can provide, and we'll try and see if we can work a way through. Is that okay?
Yeah, well, obviously, we've been a community interest company. We have full accounts previously, but
Yeah.
Our charity accounts are, well, it's only for the last 4 months, so to
Yeah.
speak.
I think if you submit the other ones with it, then, you know, we can have a look at those. But yeah, I'll cut. If you send me a message, then we can make contact, and maybe we can have an exchange and just bottom out exactly what's best. Is that
Okay, no
okay?
worries. Yeah, that's
Lovely.
fine.
Thank you.
And we've also got a message in the chat about the reporting. So it was 6 monthly this year, and it's going to 3 monthly. So he just wants to know if there's the reason for the change of reporting timeframes.
Yeah, I think we've just found that we did move to 6 monthly this year, and obviously the first monitoring reports are due in on the 15th of October. It just feels that it's an awful long time throughout the year has gone, and we haven't had any formal sort of monitoring information or updates regarding the project. So, and obviously resources within you know, the OPCC have been very stretched with all the commissioning work that we've been doing this year. So I think we understand that the grants are really important to the Commissioner in helping him to deliver his police and crime plan. And we want to make sure that those projects are on track and that hopefully the outcomes that have been identified are being achieved. So that's why we're looking to move to a quarterly monitoring sort of regime, if you like, moving forwards. Just to see how that works too, and, you know, see which one I suppose works best. And I think that 3 monthly will give us more of a feel for how things are going during the course of the year. 6 months feels a little bit too long.
Any more questions, anyone? No. Well, I can pass over to the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, Emma Daniel, now to close the meeting. That's all right.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for coming. It's great to see everybody, old and new, on screen today, and I really hope that this has been informative for you. Quite a few questions there. Obviously, the 3-month reporting, we do think that's going to be a positive change. A couple of comments in the chat there appreciating it, so that's really good. Just all I can say is we'd really encourage you to really think about how your project can support both diversion and prevention across Warwickshire, or indeed in some smaller areas where your projects are going to deliver. And I'd encourage you to talk to the Community Safety Partnership, talk to the police and talk to others. It's really great to see a few people sharing their contact details in the chat. And as Priya's already mentioned, the delegate lists can be shared. So try and work with others. Those of you that have been to our grants launch previously, you'll have noted that we always try and encourage everybody to talk and get some really good engagements and work together, because that's how we can deliver some really great solutions to the people in Warwickshire. All of the supporting documents that you've seen today will be shared and are available on the website. And as Neil said at the start of this presentation, we are recording this. And again, if anybody or another organisation can listen into this presentation at a later date. So hopefully, even if those that couldn't attend, if you can share it more widely, that's great. Encourage others to have a look. Just to reiterate, the deadline is the 10th of November at midnight. So start getting those applications in. We look forward to getting those. And best of luck, really, to all of you. The work you're doing is great. Please keep doing what you're doing to support the communities and make Warwickshire safer. Just a very quick plug from me. We have got our budget consultation survey that is out. It's on our website on the front page. Please plug from us. If you could plug it on your social media, that will help us, and also fill it out yourselves. But hopefully see you all soon, and we look forward to getting all your applications, and thank you very much.